Hello, and welcome to another episode in the Georgia Workers' Compensation video series. My name is Jason Perkins. I'm an attorney who specializes in handling Georgia workers' compensation cases. I created this series of videos to provide people who've been hurt at work in Georgia with helpful information about Georgia's workers' compensation laws and the benefits they should receive under those laws. Now, let's jump straight into today's topic. Today, I'd like to talk to you about what is a great workers' compensation settlement. Well, truthfully, that's a difficult question to answer. It depends on a number of different factors. Now, you may have seen that many attorneys have billboards or websites that talk about the monetary amounts of workers' compensation settlements. And while the monetary amount of a settlement is certainly an important factor, it's definitely not the only factor that goes into a settlement or even the most important one. All workers' compensation cases are different, and what might be a great settlement amount in one workers' compensation case could be a terrible settlement amount in a different workers' compensation case. Your workers' compensation case is more than just the type of injury that you suffered and a monetary amount assigned to that type of injury. So what factors go into determining what is a great workers' compensation settlement? Well, before we can really talk about that, you really need to understand what a workers' compensation settlement is. The first thing that you should understand about workers' compensation settlements is they're voluntary. You can't ever be forced to settle your workers' compensation case, and the insurance company can't be forced to settle your workers' compensation case either. So if there's a settlement reached in a workers' compensation case, it's because both parties have agreed that they're going to settle the case as opposed to having the case continue to go on. Now, the second thing to understand about a settlement is if there is a settlement itself is a negotiated agreement to give up your future workers' compensation rights in exchange for a negotiated amount of money. Now, since I mentioned that this is a negotiated agreement, this means that the insurance company has a choice about how much they're going to offer you to settle your case. And you have a choice about what you're going to accept to settle your case. As I mentioned earlier, you can't be forced to settle, so each side can decide how much they want to offer or what they want to take. A different way of saying that is that there is no person in workers' compensation that makes a decision about what your settlement amount is going to be. So there's not a workers' compensation judge you can go to that can decide a settlement of your case, or anyone else for that matter, a mediator or someone else like that. If a settlement's going to be reached, it's because you and the insurance company have agreed that they're going to pay you this amount of money and you're going to accept it to settle your workers' compensation case. Now, one very important amount of any great settlement is that you get the insurance company's top dollar offer on the table. As I mentioned, the monetary amount of a settlement is an important factor in it, and whether it's a good settlement or not. Now, insurance companies are businesses, and they're in business to make money. And your workers' compensation case is costing them money. And if they settle your case, they're going to pay you a certain amount of money in order for you to give up your future workers' compensation rights. So that means you're going to want to settle your case for as little as possible. So what that ultimately means is getting the insurance company's true top dollar on the table can be very tricky, especially if you don't have a good understanding of Georgia workers' compensation law. Even though monetary amount is an important factor in what makes a great settlement, the most important factor, in my opinion, is whether the settlement puts you in a better position than you would be if you didn't settle your workers' compensation case. Because the decision to turn down the insurance company's top dollar offer is really a decision that you're better on to keep on going with your workers' compensation case. When I discuss settlement with people that I represent in workers' compensation cases, my clients, I tell them that they really have two options. One is to stay on this workers' compensation road that they've been on since they got hurt. And they're dealing with the workers' compensation system and the pros and cons of that. And they cannot be forced to settle their case, so they can always choose to stay on that workers' compensation road. And we talk about what may happen to them in the future if they do stay on that road. Or the other option is to take what I call a settlement exit ramp, to accept a lump sum amount of money and be done with workers' compensation. Since those are the two options when it comes to your workers' compensation case, you can either settle or continue dealing with workers' compensation. It's really just comparing those two options and figuring out which one's better. And really, something that's important if you're going to make that decision is understanding what's going to happen with each one of those options. So, having a good understanding of what may happen if you do decide to settle your case, and also having a good understanding of what's going to happen in the future if you don't settle your case and you stay in the workers' compensation system. Well, in order to have a good understanding of what's going to happen if you stay in the workers' compensation system, you really need to understand Georgia's workers' compensation system very well. You need to understand all the things that the insurance company is likely to do in the future and what your workers' compensation doctors may say in the future and how those things that the doctors say are going to affect whether you keep getting benefits or not going forward, and the limits on how long you can get those benefits. There are a bunch of different rules that you need to know about. Now, probably the most important thing to know about a workers' compensation settlement is that it is final once it has been signed and reviewed and approved by a workers' compensation judge. Another way of saying that is that you can't settle your workers' compensation case without having a judge review and approve it. But once the judge approves it, you generally can't undo that settlement. So what that really means is when you're making a decision about settlement, you need to make a very good decision. You need to have a good understanding of what's going to happen to you in the future. Because once the judge has approved the settlement amount, you can't come back and undo it. So before doing that, you need to have a really good understanding of the Georgia workers' compensation system, or you need to have an attorney on your side who does. Because workers' compensation settlements in Georgia are final once they're approved by a workers' compensation judge and are almost impossible to undo at that point, I always recommend that somebody speak with a workers' compensation attorney before they move forward with settling their case. It doesn't mean that they have to hire an attorney, but they should at least be aware of their options and have a good understanding of what settlement means and also what an attorney might be able to do to help them. Because again, if you make a decision to settle your case, even if you don't have an attorney representing you, and that settlement paperwork signed and then the judge approves it, you're not going to be able to change things later. So you want to make sure and make a very good decision about settlement when you are exploring that process and have all the information that you need in order to make that decision. I hope you found the information in this video helpful. If you have, please consider two things before you go. First, I'd really appreciate if you give this video a like or a thumbs up, and consider subscribing to this channel if you'd like to be notified of future videos in the Georgia Workers' Compensation video series. Second, if you've got workers' compensation questions, please reach out to get answers. I offer free consultations in Georgia workers' compensation cases. If you'd like to set one of those up, there's two easy ways you can do so. The first is by calling the phone number at the bottom of the screen, and the other is by reaching out to us to our website, which is www.perkinslawtalk.com. Just click on and submit the free consultation request form there, and a member of our team will reach out to you and get a consultation scheduled. I'd like to thank you again for watching this video today. I'd like to wish you the best of luck as you recover from your injuries.